think fans like rebuilds until the losing actually starts. Like I think they have this idea of essentially like a Cinderella rebuild. Like we get a couple of guys and then we exceed all expectations and then we're good. And like as we know, sometimes teams start rebuilds and then they never get out.
He is the Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press and the co-host of the Pistons Pulse podcast. We welcome back Omari Sankofa II onto Hoopsology. How's it going?
Hey, it's going good. It's going good. Thanks a lot for having me.
And thanks for coming back on the show. Always enjoy your insight. And I think the team you covered, the Detroit Pistons, one of the most compelling teams in the league, just despite their record. And I just want to, jump into it just in regards to their slow start to the season and what kind of observations you've seen. Anything encouraging just despite their slow start and struggles.
Yeah, I think this week has been a positive week for them. They did lose to the Bucks by about 30 points the other night, but they beat the Golden State Warriors at home. At the Pistons home, that is, on Sunday, and then went down to the wire with the Bucks a day later on the road. They, I think, trailed by as many as 14 in that game, and ended up tying them at 105 pretty late, and just couldn't hit the shots down the stretch. But yeah, I think with a team like this team is really in year three of the restoring, as they like to call it, but really a rebuild, and you kind of just look for growth wherever you could find it. And I think Cade's had a good start to his second season, and Sadiq and some of the other guys have played pretty well, and they've gotten some good play from the rookies too. So, I think long term that's sort of the signs of growth you want to see long term. Even if this team obviously right now is probably not going to win a lot of games, just looking at how deep the East is, and the average age for
Sure.
this team is like 24, 25 or something. So it's just tough to win when you're that young.
So you mentioned Cade Cunningham. What was his mentality headed into this season, just in terms of what he would like to see improvements, not only in his game, but overall kind of the team chemistry as well?
I think he came into this season really wanting to continue to establish himself as the franchise player they drafted him to be. Of course, he was the number one pick in 2021. He put on some pounds this offseason, 15 pounds, just to he wanted to just do a better job of establishing his position. And I think he understands that not being the greatest athlete, he's going to have to win just off of strength and craft, more so than just blowing by guys. So kind of had a slow start, and I know some fans were worried about him during preseason because he wasn't lighting the world on fire. And then the first couple of games were slow, but until that Bucks loss last night, in his last four games, he averaged around 28 points, like around 8 rebounds, 8 assists. So you kind of see the light bulb go on at times, and when he's locked in, I mean, he's perfectly capable of carrying this team to a win. So I think, it's just him being that player every single night. For the team to win, he can't just do it one night a week or two nights a week. It's got to be three or four.
Well, Mari, in terms of X's and O's, are you seeing any major differences, like schematically from the Pistons from last year compared to this year? They've got some new weapons with Jaden Ivey, of course, and the rookies that you mentioned. What are you seeing different schematically this year so far?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything significantly different from last year. I
Mhm.
know last year they switched 1 through 5 a lot, and this year they've kind of mixing their coverages up a little bit more. You can switch 1 through 5 with Isaiah Stewart because he's five that can stay in front of a lot of guards, like we saw him hold his own against. And I say hold your own, you're not going to stop those guys, but he could switch on the guys like Luca and James Harden, some of the bigger guards, and you feel pretty good about it. He's 6'9", moves his feet well. With Jalen Duran, they've been playing a little bit more drop. He's about 6'11". It isn't quite as mobile as Isaiah Stewart. For the most part, it's been um, a pretty similar script as last year. I think offensively, it's hard. I feel like it's kind of hard to judge schemes of teams like this anyway, because like whatever you
Sure.
want to do, you probably don't have the depth to necessarily do it to the extent you want to
Sure.
anyway. I know Boyan Bogdanovic has given them a really big lift on offense, just being the guy who can do a little bit of everything. And he's kind of in the same role Sadiq Bey was in last year, and Sadiq Bey still in this year. But now I think having two big wings who can really shoot the ball has kind of opened some things up for this team offensively. So a lot of it's more of the same, but a few new wrinkles. They experimented with posting up Cade Cunningham a little bit during preseason, and they said they wanted to get to it more this year. We haven't seen it as much, but We just played the Bucks twice. It's certain games where you're probably not going to want to post Kate Cunningham up like against Milwaukee, obviously. So over the course of the year, I think we'll continue to see them kind of mix some things up and experiment.
So compare it to team I root for, the Houston Rockets, and the Rockets and Pistons. I see them talking to each other a lot since, of course, Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green win in the same draft. And to me, it seems the Rockets right now, their offense is kind of aimless. Do you see um, like ideas that are sort of making progress with this Pistons team? Do you see in terms of like Cade's development and just their cohesion as a unit overall, that there is some direction and positive movement?
Yeah, I think over the course of last season, we saw them doing a little bit more pick and roll with Cade, and that's kind of carried over to this season. I think one of the big changes from last year that we're seeing this year is Isaiah Stewart being more of a pick and pop big versus pick and roll. He's his jump shot's mechanically fine. I mean, he's got I think one of the purest strokes on the team, just as far as pure mechanics. Hasn't been falling, but I think the team recognized pretty early he's a little bit undersized. Like he could post up a little bit, but we're not going to post him up because teams generally aren't doing that anymore. Like how could he add value on offense? And as a road guy, he's got some limitations. He's not the biggest. He's not the highest leaper, and he kind of gets lost amongst the trees down there sometimes. So I'd say one of the biggest storylines, just as far as their schemes being different, is now you have a guy in Isaiah Stewart who is very valuable defensively, and if he can knock down threes consistently, that opens up the floor and also gives him maybe more of a defined role on offense. Because long term, you have Jalen Duran now, and he's obviously probably more fit to be a role guy. Just looking at the type of athlete he is, his size, like his catch radius, he can just do a little bit more on that end. So yeah, I think Isaiah Stewart as more of a floor spacing five it's been a work in progress, but he's been shooting them. Like he's probably between 3 and 4 attempts a game right now. And he can hit them. He's had a lot of attempts like literally go halfway down and then pop back out. Like he could easily be. He's probably shooting around 20% right now. He could easily be at 40 right now had he just had a little bit more luck. So, I think as the season goes on, as he kind of gets that feel down for how you could screen and then pop and kind of open things up, I think that could pay dividends for him.
Going back to Cade real quick, I saw an article published recently in The Athletic comparing his game to DeMar DeRozan. I'm a Bulls fan, so I see DeMar all the time with his mid-range game. Do you see a comparable comparison between the two of them? And it really made it seem like, Cade Cunningham could be the heir to the throne of that mid-range game. Do you agree with that observation?
I do see some similarities between them. Cade's really going to the mid range shot this year. He went to it last year. I think he shot probably a higher share of mid range jumpers than a lot of guards do. And the numbers are a little fuzzy only because like I use cleaning the glass a lot because you're able to break down where players are taking their shots, like what percentage come from short, mid range, long mid range, three, and whatnot, and then their accuracy from each spot. And they list Cade as a wing instead of a point guard. So ideally, you want to compare him to guys like Chris Paul, and he ends up being compared to more of the Tatum's when it comes to that. But I think either way, his efficiency from mid range and just his value for mid range are both up from last year, and he's really sort of honed in on that shot. Just like kind of finding the soft spots in the defense. Like pulling up, side step, whatever it is. He's really been comfortable in the mid range, really the last week and a half or so. And I think that's got to open things up for him. I think defenses in general, are more geared toward not giving up threes and shots at the rim these days. So if you can knock down those mid range shots at 45% or above clip, I think that's really going to keep your offense moving. I think DeMar is a different tier of athlete,
Sure.
obviously, but I think Cade, being a guy who could really you could put the ball in his hands and feel good about it. He's the best passer on the team. He's got great vision. He's absolutely a big point guard. Um, I think you could say DeMar DeRozan. You could say Chris Paul. I think Chris Paul
Sure.
has been one of the best mid range shooters throughout his career, and we've kind of seen like sometimes I see parallels between Cade and Chris Paul just in how they sort of attack the game. I could even throw Paul Pierce out there. Like he was always pretty good for mid range and probably shot a higher volume of threes than Cade shot. Like I know his 3 point volume is down this season compared to last year, but whatever mid range marksman you want to compare him to, I like to go to if Paul Pierce were a point guard, he'd probably be Cade Cunningham. So I mean DeMar, Paul Pierce, Chris Paul, whoever. I think all those guys are pretty apt comparisons.
Yeah, and all great names players would like to be compared to, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Looking at Jaden Ivey, wanted to talk about his fit in the offense, playing alongside Cade. What have you seen so far from him? His fit in the offense, his fit on the team overall, and his performance in terms of meeting, exceeding expectations.
Yeah, I think he's been exactly the player he was advertised to be coming out
Hmm.
of Purdue, and maybe in some areas a little bit better. I think the main thing for him coming out of college was just his athleticism, but specifically just the way he's able to get downhill, his first step, the way he's able to kind of glide through traffic and take wide steps and whatnot. Like we've seen that when he drives into the lane. He's one of those guys where it's clear, like every scouting report is like, just don't let him get inside. Like he's drawing, 4 or 5 sets of eyes every time he gets in there, and a lot
Hmm.
of times it doesn't matter. I mean, he's just, like I think he moves so fast. Sometimes you don't necessarily realize how fast he's moving because he makes it look easy, but
Hmm.
like his burst to the open floor, like it's opened a lot of things up for the Pistons already, and even in the half court. And I think what surprised me is that he's proven to be a pretty good half court passer. Like I think anytime you have a guard like him who is a player in transition, you know that he's going to open things up, in transition. But just the way he's been able to kind of back up, find a little bit of room, pull by a defender, and then a driving kick or find a cutter or whatever it may be. He's been really good at that, and I think I'm probably a bit higher on him being an actual lead guard in the NBA than I was before he was drafted because that was the biggest knock on him. Not the biggest knock, but one of the biggest knocks coming on him coming out of college is he a guy that could be a lead playmaker where you always have to pair him next to a player like Cade Cunningham. So from that respect, I think he's done it in a good spot. But just based on 2 weeks of play and then preseason, and even summer league, he has some nice passes. I think long term, it's possible the Pistons might have 2 lead guards, which is a good situation to have. Obviously, with teams wanting to run multiple ball handlers together.
Amari, I want to ask you about the next stretch for the Pistons. They got a tough patch of games coming up. What is the mentality of a team like this to they're not in contention for the playoffs, but they want to stay competitive. What is their mindset just to make sure that they stay interested during this entire time? Does K take the leadership role? Do the coaches do they move in to make sure that the players stay motivated? Like, what is kind of the framework entering such a tough stretch of games coming up?
Yeah, I think that's the difficulty when you're rebuilding is just keeping everybody on the same page. I think everybody gets tired of losing, and this front office has talked, pretty openly about just the challenge of keeping players motivated, making sure they see sort of the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, the team won 20 games 2 years ago. They won 23 games last year, so significantly more losses than wins. And you have those guys from the 2020 class, Isaiah Stewart, Sadiq Bey, Killian Hayes, who have lost a lot, in their first 2 seasons in the NBA. I think that the coaching staff and the front office has been very careful when it comes to setting expectations. They haven't deliberately talked about making the playoffs yet. It's been very much like let's be competitive. Like let's make teams sweat. Like let's be in every game. Like let's make sure we're setting um, the culture that we want when we do eventually turn the corner. I thought the way Trey Weaver kind of phrased it during media day, he said the team is at ground zero right now, but he took over. Blake Griffin was still on the roster. The dead money from his contract was still on the blitz last year, so that kind of hamstrung the front office as far as being able to build a roster with actual depth. And they're a little banged up right now. They're waiting for Alec Burks and Marvin Bagley and to come back. During this, miss some time, but they do have better depth this year. So I think they want to see. I don't know if they necessarily want to see 2023 wins again unless players get hurt or you just lose about 1 point, every night. But regardless of how you get, to that point at the end of the season, I think they want to look back at this year and say we were better than we were from 2020 to 2022. Even if it doesn't show up in the wins and losses, you want to see Cade, Sadiq, Jaden, all those guys show that they're players that you can build around.
So let's say this season doesn't go, live up to the expectations that were laid out. There's a lot of anticipation about the draft class in 2023. Are there any rumblings from like the fan base in terms of, hey, we should just call this season whatever and just see what happens in the NBA draft lottery? Are there those rumblings among that fan base, or do they really want to see this core really rebuild and not go the tanking routes? What is kind of the philosophy just among the fan base there?
Yeah, I think I think fans would have won 82 games and win the lottery. Honestly, I think they, I think fans like rebuilds until the losing actually starts. Like I think they have this idea of essentially like a Cinderella rebuild. Like we get a couple guys and then we exceed all expectations and then we're good. And like as we know, sometimes teams start rebuilds and then they never get out. Like I talk, Lions on Twitter a lot, just being a born and raised Detroiter, and I say, yeah, I mean, it's like year, like two for this front office, like year two for the coaching staff. Like, first they're going to lose, right? And then people are like, they've been rebuilding since I was born, and it's like, yeah, but I mean, like they're not wrong, but it's a different front office, right? So you kind of have
Sure.
to, sometimes I encourage fans, like, hey, I mean, if you're gonna rebuild, it means losing. Like, I don't think you fire the coach just because he lost against the Bucks, right? Like, that's kind of inherent to rebuilding is that you're going to lose certain games. So no, I mean I think a lot of Pistons fans get it. Like they understand that Troy Weaver's not the previous GM. The previous GM was the previous GM, and you have Cade Cunningham now. You have some guys who can clearly play, and you have a lot of cap space coming up next summer. There'll be around 50 million, so they'll kind of have the mechanisms they need to improve pretty rapidly after they haven't won a playoff game since I was in eighth grade. So it's been a
Mm.
while. That was 14 years ago. But I think fans get it in general. I think the day to day, week to week, month to month process of just taking your lump sucks, and and who wants to watch losing, right? Like it makes sense. But if you kind of look at the overall picture, you look at where this team was, 3 years ago, and you just see how much young talent they have, and you might add another lottery pick this year in a pretty good draft, and you have cap space. Like there's a very clear um, path this team could take toward being good. A year from now or 2 years from now, and overall, like I think fans get it. I just think in the process of the rebuild, it's like, well, we should be winning these games, right? And it's like, well, the Bees had 10 teams with winning records last year, and the Pistons are still very clearly a tier under most of the conference. So that's kind of how it goes, right?